So what actually happens to the human body when it's pushed to a level of stress so extreme, so entirely overwhelming, that your basic biology just, starts to break down?
Yeah, that is a wild question to think about.
Right. Today, we're looking at probably the most famous garden in history. But we aren't looking at it as some place of peace or tranquility. We're looking at it as a site of immense fatal trauma.
And I mean, it's such a fascinating reframe. We inherently associate gardens with, quiet retreats and manicured paths.
Yeah, totally.
But the specific location we're exploring today was literally an environment designed for intense pressure. And it became the epicenter of this profound physical and spiritual breaking point.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking an intensive look into the Garden of Gethsemane.
Right.
And our mission today is to reconstruct the events of that single fateful night using a really unique stack of sources.
Yeah, we've got a great mix here.
We do. We're pulling from modern sleep medicine blogs, historical and archaeological records, theological essays, and even some detailed sermons.
And our goal here is to really get past just a standard history lesson. We want to understand the profound human and divine struggle that occurred on that soil. We're looking for the practical takeaways about stress, about human weakness, and, well, what it actually looks like to submit to a higher purpose when every instinct in your body is screaming at you to run away.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the events of the night itself, we have to establish the geography, because the location isn't just a backdrop.
No, not at all.
The environment itself kind of tells you what's about to happen.
Yeah, the name gives away its core function. Gethsemane comes from the Aramaic word gadsman and the Hebrew gath shemenim.
Right.
And in English, that translates to oil press. This site is located at the western foot of the Mount of Olives.
See, when I read that in the sources, it completely changed the image in my head.
Oh, I bet.
Because I always pictured this serene park.
Yeah.
But an ancient oil press, I mean, that's an industrial site.
Exactly.
You take these ripe, whole olives and you place them under massive, heavy stone slabs. The entire purpose of the machinery is to crush things under immense weight until they burst and yield their valuable oil.
What's fascinating here is how modern archaeology has grounded this exact theological narrative in cold, hard dirt and stone.
Yeah, the physical proof.
Right. For a long time, skeptics could argue that Gethsemane was just, a mythological setting created to sound poetic. But the physical evidence tells a very different story.
Yes, let's look at the timeline of these discoveries because they are staggering.
They really are.
So our sources mention an excavation back in 1956 by an archaeologist named Virgilio Corbo. He dug into the Gethsemane grotto and found the physical remains of an agricultural facility from the Second Temple era.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, the Second Temple era refers specifically to the time period between the 6th century BC and the year 70 AD.
So right in that pocket.
Exactly. It's the exact cultural and historical window when Jesus was walking the earth. Finding an agricultural facility from that specific window proves that a working olive press existed right where the texts say it did.
But the discoveries didn't stop in the 50s.
No, they didn't.
I was reading about this dig in December 2020. They found the remains of a 1,500-year-old Byzantine church. But more importantly, right beneath that, they found the foundations of a Jewish ritual bath.
A mikveh.
Yeah, mikveh from that same Second Temple era. And I kept wondering, why does a ritual bath matter in an olive grove?
Well, it matters immensely because of purity laws. A mikveh is a stepped pool used for ritual immersion to achieve ceremonial purity.
Okay.
So finding one in an agricultural setting strongly suggests that the oil being produced there wasn't just for everyday cooking.
I see.
It was likely being prepared under strict purity regulations, possibly for use in the nearby temple in Jerusalem. So it establishes the site as a place of high religious significance, not just, random farm.
That makes so much sense. And the timeline comes right up to the present day. In March 2025, scholars from Sapienza University discovered 2,000-year-old organic remains of vines and olive trees in that exact area.
That was a huge find.
Huge. Plus, they tested the ancient olive trees still standing in the garden today. Carbon dating puts the visible trunks at around the year 1092.
Which is old enough on its own.
Right, but the DNA test shows something wild. They were all planted from the exact same parent root.
Which means the root systems currently sitting in the soil of Gethsemane could very well date back to the 1st century.
Wow.
Olive trees are incredibly resilient. If they're cut down, new shoots just grow from the original roots. The soil itself holds the memory of those events.
So we have this environment, an industrial press designed to extract oil through heavy stone weights.
Right.
How does a human body react when it's subjected to that same kind of invisible crushing weight?
To understand that, we have to look at the physiological breakdown that occurred that night. One of our sources is this really fascinating analysis by Dr. Andy Perkowski. He's a specialist in sleep medicine.
Yeah, I loved his blog posts.
So good. He reviewed the historical accounts from a purely biological perspective, and he notes that Jesus was in a state of massive cognitive and emotional hyperarousal.
Now, we've all felt stressed before, like a big presentation or a difficult conversation, but what does hyperarousal mean at a cellular level in this context?
It means the sympathetic nervous system is just redlining.
Okay.
This system controls the body's natural fight or flight response.
Yeah.
You have to picture the scene. It's late at night, well past a normal sleep schedule.
Right.
But Jesus' brain is anticipating imminent betrayal by a close friend, followed by a torturous execution. So the brain signals the adrenal glands to release a massive, overwhelming flood of cortisol and adrenaline.
So the body is entirely geared up for a physical battle for survival?
Yes, the pupils dilate, the heart rate skyrockets, and blood is shunted away from the digestive tract and pushed into the major muscle groups.
Just totally primed for action.
Exactly. The biology is preparing to either run at top speed or fight to the death. And we know from the historical accounts that a physical altercation did happen shortly after.
Oh, right. Swords were drawn and a man's ear was severed.
Like, the threat environment was severe.
I do want to push back on a specific detail from the Gospel of Luke, though, because this has always bugged me.
Go for it.
Luke writes that Jesus was in such agony that his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground.
Right, the sweating blood.
I've always read that and assumed Luke, who was actually a physician, was just using a really vivid dramatic simile, like saying, it was raining buckets.
Sure.
Is sweating blood a documented medical reality, or is that just ancient poetry?
It sounds completely hyperbolic, I know, but hematidrosis is a documented, extremely rare medical phenomenon.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It occurs only when a human is subjected to the absolute upper limits of profound psychological stress.
So his body is basically tearing its own plumbing apart because the blood pressure is so high.
That is a highly accurate way to describe it. Under extreme distress, the tiny capillaries, the smallest blood vessels in the body that surround the sweat glands, they constrict violently.
Oh, wow.
And as the exhaustion and pressure continue, those vessels eventually dilate to the point of rupturing. The blood spills into the sweat glands, mixes with the perspiration, and is just pushed out through the pores.
That is a total physiological breaking point.
It really is.
He was being crushed from the inside out, perfectly mirroring the olive press he was sitting in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this intense biological reaction highlights one of the most striking contrasts in the entire narrative. Because while Jesus' body's breaking down under the weight of adrenaline and cortisol, his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, are doing the exact opposite.
They are passing out.
Yep.
They fall asleep multiple times. And I have to admit, I've always judged them a bit for this.
Most people do.
I mean, if I know an armed mob is coming to arrest my mentor, the adrenaline alone would keep my eyes wide open. Why on earth are they sleeping?
It really comes down to the mechanics of the sleep drive. Dr. Burkowski explains this using modern sleep science. Humans have what is called a homeostatic sleep drive.
Okay.
You can think of it as a biological pressure cooker for sleep. From the moment you wake up, a chemical called adenosine starts building in your brain.
So it's like fuel for sleep.
Exactly. The longer you are awake, the higher the pressure to sleep becomes.
And the text explicitly notes that Jesus found them, quote, sleeping from grief.
And that phrase is scientifically profound. Dr. Perkowski points out that in modern therapies, like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, intentional sleep restriction is used to force the brain to sleep deeply, overriding anxiety.
Interesting.
The disciples were experiencing intense grief and fear, which is mentally exhausting.
Oh, for sure.
That emotional exhaustion accelerated their homeostatic sleep drive to a critical mass. Their brains essentially forced a system shutdown to protect them from the psychological overload, totally overriding the threat of the mob.
You know, one of our sources uses an analogy for this that made it really click for me.
Oh, which one?
They compared the sleep drive to an impetuous toddler throwing a tantrum by holding their breath to threaten their parents.
Right.
As a parent, you might panic, but eventually, basic biology kicks in. The child passes out, the autonomic nervous system takes over, and forces them to breathe again. You can't outwill basic biology forever.
That's a great way to put it.
The disciples' biology simply hijacked them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a deep theological layer regarding human limitation. When Jesus finds them asleep, he tells them, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak."
And flesh doesn't just mean muscle and bone here, right?
Right. In theological terms, the flesh represents the entirety of human nature, which is inherently vulnerable, easily exhausted, and prone to self-preservation.
What really stands out to me in the sources is Jesus' reaction to them. He doesn't treat their sleepiness as some kind of demonic attack.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't magically rebuke a spirit of fatigue. He just tells them to stay active, to watch and pray so they don't fall into temptation.
Because sleep is a natural, God-given requirement. One of the sources references Psalm 127, which states that God grants sleep to those he loves.
Yeah.
Having a body that requires rest isn't a sin. But in this specific high-stakes moment, giving in to that natural limitation became a massive spiritual vulnerability.
That makes sense.
Overcoming the flesh isn't about hating your physical needs. It's about bringing those legitimate needs into submission when a higher spiritual duty is required.
Which brings us to the agonizing prayer Jesus prays while the disciples are unconscious. He goes a little further into the grove, falls on his face, and says, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me."
Yeah.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
If Jesus is supposedly the fully divine Son of God, and he knows the entire plan of salvation relies on him going to the cross, doesn't asking for a way out kind of undermine the whole mission?
It does seem that way at first glance.
I mean, it sounds like he's terrified and having second thoughts. Doesn't that make him look afraid?
It is entirely natural to read it that way, but the theological sources argue the exact opposite. This prayer is not a failure of courage. In fact, it's the ultimate necessary proof of his true humanity.
How does begging to escape prove his humanity?
Well, think about the design of a healthy human mind and body. We are hardwired to preserve life and avoid pain.
Sure.
If Jesus casually skipped toward a torturous death without a shred of dread or hesitation, he would be an alien.
He'd be a robot.
Right. He wouldn't be truly human. A fully human nature must be repulsed by suffering and death.
I see. So the fear validates that he's experiencing this as a real man, not just a deity wearing a human suit.
Furthermore, we have to define what he's actually afraid of. He asks for this cup to pass.
Right, the cup.
In the Old Testament, in books like Isaiah and Jeremiah, the cup is a consistent metaphor for the wrath and judgment of God poured out against human rebellion.
Okay, so it's not just the physical pain.
No. Jesus isn't just dreading the Roman scourging and the nails, as horrific as those are. He's dreading the spiritual severing from the Father. He is about to absorb the collective guilt of the world.
Wow. You know, one of the sources pulls in a fascinating historical detail about that cup.
The Passover connection.
Yes. Earlier that evening, they were celebrating the Passover meal. And in a traditional Passover Seder, there are 4 specific cups of wine consumed.
Right.
But the gospel accounts show Jesus deliberately pausing the meal after the 3rd cup. He doesn't drink the final one.
And that 4th cup is known as the cup of consummation.
Exactly. And the scholars suggest that this cup he's agonizing over in Gethsemane is the spiritual equivalent of that 4th cup.
That is such a profound detail.
He delayed drinking it in the upper room because he knew he had to drink it on the cross, which he finally does right before declaring it is finished.
That synthesis of the Passover tradition with the agony in the garden is just brilliant. It shows he understood the full theological weight of what was coming. And it makes the second half of his prayer in Gethsemane the pivot point of history. He says, "Yet not as I will, but as you will."
Yeah.
He acknowledges the screaming dread of his human nature, and then he actively, painfully subordinates that human will to the divine plan.
So what does this all mean? That phrase he uses, "your will be done," it feels so familiar, like an echo of something we've heard earlier in the story.
It is a direct echo. In Matthew chapter 6, earlier in his ministry, Jesus teaches his followers how to pray. We know it as the Lord's Prayer.
Oh, right.
He instructs them to say, "Our Father in heaven," to ask, "Your will be done," and to request, "Lead us not into temptation."
And here in the Olive Press, those exact phrases are playing out in real time.
Yes, they are.
He calls out, "My Father," he submits with, "Your will be done," and he warns the disciples to pray that they don't enter into temptation. He is literally practicing his own sermon in the darkest moment of his life.
And while the disciples failed to live up to that prayer, Jesus became the only one to perfectly execute it.
Right.
And the theological sources point out another incredible symmetry here. It's a tale of 2 gardens.
Wait, two gardens? You mean contrasting this with the Garden of Eden?
Yes. The biblical narrative of humanity's brokenness begins in a garden, and the rescue operation climaxes in a garden.
Oh, I've never thought about it like that.
In Eden, the first Adam was placed in a literal paradise, surrounded by perfection, comfort, and life. Yet he chose to disobey the divine plan, essentially saying through his actions, "Not your will, but mine be done."
Oh, wow. That is powerful.
Then you have the last Adam, Jesus. He is placed in Gethsemane, an environment of extreme pressure, surrounded by darkness, impending torture, and the crushing weight of impending death.
The complete opposite of Eden?
Right. And in that agony, he chooses to obey, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." He completely reverses the ancient failure of Eden within the crushing environment of Gethsemane.
Let me try an analogy to capture the weight of what you're saying about him acting as a representative.
Go for it.
Imagine a soldier on night watch in a combat zone. You have a unit of soldiers who are completely exhausted. They have nothing left in the tank, and despite the danger, their bodies force them to sleep.
Like the disciples.
Exactly. The soldier on watch, the proxy, have to stay awake. They bear the full weight of the impending threat, scanning the dark, fighting their own exhaustion to protect the people behind them who are entirely incapable of protecting themselves in that moment.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. This raises an important question for you, the listener. How do you view your own failures when you promise to do better but fall short?
Yeah, that's the real application here.
The disciples had the best intentions. They promised they would never abandon him, but their biology and their human nature failed them. The theological takeaway is that our ultimate hope cannot rest on having a perfectly willing spirit, because eventually human willpower runs out.
It always does.
The hope is found in trusting the proxy, the one who stayed awake on the watch and drank the cup when humanity could not.
That shifts the burden entirely. Okay, let's recap the journey we've just been on, because we've covered massive ground.
We really have.
We started with the physical archaeological reality of an ancient olive press, a machine designed to crush fruit under heavy stone. We moved into the biological realm, exploring how extreme cognitive hyperarousal can push a human body to the point of tearing its own capillaries and sweating blood.
Incredible to even think about.
And finally, we saw the spiritual triumph of a fully human will, honestly, expressing its terror, yet submitting to a higher divine purpose.
It is a remarkable progression. From the tactile reality of the soil to the profound spiritual reality of submission. Jesus models what it looks like to be entirely vulnerable with God about our limitations without abandoning obedience.
And that is a direct connection for you listening right now. When you are facing a season of intense pressure, when you're dealing with the kind of anxiety that spikes your cortisol and keeps you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., you don't have to put on a brave face.
No, not at all.
You don't have to pretend you're fine. You can be brutally honest with God about your dread, your fear, and your desire to escape the pain, just like Jesus was. You can say, "I want this cup taken away from me." But you can also find the strength, in that same breath, to trust his ultimate plan.
Raw honesty paired with unwavering trust.
Mm.
It is the most powerful posture a human can take.
I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over today as you carry this with you. We established early on that the word Gethsemane translates to oil press.
Right?
And we know that the violent, heavy crushing of a whole olive is the only possible way to extract its valuable, illuminating, and healing oil. So if you feel like you are in an environment of crushing weight right now, under pressures you can barely survive, what incredibly valuable oil might God be trying to press out of the most agonizing moments of your own life?